It's said that every journey begins with a single step. The first step on the Legacy Walk began 25 years ago in Washington, D.C. in October of 1987.
Well, the idea actually began back in 1987, believe it or not. Most people don't realize how long it's been going on, but we were at the March on Washington in '87, and we were so overwhelmed by the scope of that project and the experience of being there and seeing the Names Project quilt for the first time, and also the very first National Coming Out Day, which was on October 11th of 1987, and it was the juxtaposition of all those things together got me thinking about the real role gay people have played in history. And my fear, especially with the advent of AIDS, was that there was a plague that was poised to kill everyone, and who would remember who came before us when we were gone. And it was that idea that somehow we needed to find a way to create a memorial to the contributions that we had made to history. And I became obsessed with that idea, and that was pretty much how it started.
With the idea for an outdoor exhibit commemorating LGBT contributions to history and culture planted firmly in his mind, Victor, like so many others who went to Washington, returned to Chicago to face the political and social turbulence of the AIDS era. It wasn't until 1999 that all the pieces would come together to light the spark that would become the Legacy Walk.
Well, really, the first step that we had to start with was to find out who managed to maintain the pylons, which was the North Halsted Business Alliance, and we figured out backwards from there what sort of the background was and the people we would need to talk to start that process. And I reached out to State Representative Greg Harris, who was instrumental in actually bringing the pylons to Halsted Street.
In the 1990s, adding the pylons to Halsted Street was very important because it was for the first time in history that there's been a public acknowledgement of the gay community in architectural space. And in Chicago, though, it's a tradition to recognize the Greek community, the Polish community, the Irish community, the different Asian communities, and all the contributions that different groups have made to our city.
The first person that Victor sought out to discuss the creation of the Legacy Walk was his friend and mentor, community activist Art Johnston.
I remember that it was late 1999, only about a year after the streetscape was dedicated, and Victor came to me with this idea. The idea was utterly new and brilliant and challenging.
Understanding the creation of the pylon streetscape, Victor began working out his concepts and pulling his research together to prepare a presentation to the North Halsted Business Alliance and Special Services Area Number 18, which maintained the streetscape.
As the chairman of the SSA Commission for the City for North Halsted, it was brought to our attention that there's a possibility that there would be this historic plaque configuration somewhere in the city that needed to have a home and would be appropriate for the gay community specifically.
With the approval of the Business Alliance in hand, Victor sought out numerous community leaders and began to build the Legacy Project, the organization that would oversee the creation of the Legacy Walk.
The Legacy Project really is celebrating history, but it's really about the future. We won't have a future community without recognizing the contributions and the experiences of the people that are on this Legacy Walk.
Well, when I was first approached, I think what was most encouraging for me was because I think when people look at those pylons, they kind of see them as just sort of decorative, but they don't really understand the historical nature of what those things represent. And I think having them tied to people who've made history in our community really gives them more meaning.
I think the Legacy Walk is a fabulous idea because it will combine not only the architectural recognition of the LGBT community, but it will also create an outdoor museum and a living, breathing museum that folks can look at and learn about the legacy of the great people who have come from the LGBT community and improved our society, very much in the same way that the DuSable Museum recognizes contributions from the African American community, and the Puerto Rican Cultural Center has recognized folks from the Puerto Rican community. This will be a chance for folks to bring their families and learn about how the LGBT community has enriched Chicago and all of our communities.
Well, I first heard of the project several years ago from Victor when he emailed me asking for suggestions for nominees for the Legacy Walk. I didn't really understand what the purpose was, but I gave him a few suggestions, and gradually I learned more and more about the project.
At first I thought it was a very interesting project, but didn't know how it was going to be pulled off because it seemed very, very, very ambitious.
It's been really gratifying over the years to see it pick up momentum and finally to see the day arrive when we're unveiling the Legacy Walk.
The Legacy Project's nominees hail from over 30 countries, representing over 20 fields, spanning over 4,000 years of history, and they've traveled every walk of life. Yet the contributions of most have been selectively edited or removed entirely from nearly every textbook ever written.
I think we all need role models and a sense of history, and one thing the Legacy Walk project does is definitely supply those two things for folks who may be struggling and don't know what being LGBT is and how that's going to impact their lives. And so for them to see successful people and to see people honored who have this identity, I think is just a very powerful thing.
I've been really impressed with the development of this project, specifically with the attempts from the Victor and the others involved in the project to ensure that the diversity of the community and the nation and the world is represented at this site.
With the dedication of the Legacy Walk firmly set, everyone is looking to the future.
In terms of the development of the Legacy Project, we're most excited about the education initiative at the Illinois Safe Schools Alliance, both to have young people come to North Halsted Street to learn about their history and their culture, but also to bring that back to their schools.
When I think about the future, I want to be able to walk down this street that I grew up on and be able to say, I'm now part of this history and we're a part of history.
Over the years has just been very inspiring, and I think that people who see the actual project, what's on the ground, are going to be extremely excited too.
I think the Legacy Walk can play a very important role in helping with tolerance, with understanding, because it will help fill a significant void in our community, and that is that too many of us have no idea of who we are and how we got here.
The LGBT community took its place with the other communities who have built Chicago. And we're a community of immigrants, we're a community of different cultures and different art and different strength and different vitality. And the LGBT community certainly has played its role in history, and it just makes me feel good to know that our history as LGBT citizens is now being recognized, along with all the other citizens who over the years and over the decades have made Chicago the wonderful city that it is.
It's about the past meeting the future, you know, and moving forward with that, and I'm just so thrilled that we're going to be able to do that.
25 years in the making, the Legacy Walk, the only installation of its kind in the world, has come to Halsted Street.